Hey, Billy, you know what's awesome?
What's that?
The Karate Kid.
Hey, everybody. Happy quarantine. Not exactly the way that we wanted to come to you with this whole new idea, but actually, the whole new idea came because of what's going on in the world. So, uh, this is your host, or one of the hosts. I'm Billy Stuart. You might know me from such podcasts as Scary Dad Podcast
Whoop whoop.
and guest hosting on other ones. And here with me, as for the first time, is Mr. Ricky Morgan. You
Hey,
might
hey.
know him from such podcasts as all of them. Introduce yourself. Tell us all where you've been and where you're going.
Well,
You got a pretty decent resume.
for all my Legion family, I think they're like, oh, great, another show from this guy, right? But for all the Scary Dad fans, which I am a fan of as well, I think we have a very mutual love for each other's shows, and that's kind of how this came about. But I've got a show with my best friend Danny Bennett, which is called the Hell Ming Power Hour, which is the best way to describe that show is it's entertaining, but we lie about everything. The synopsis for movies is fake. The reviews are fake. The movies are real, but we basically give you our top 5 to 10 reasons of why to check out a movie and why we think it's awesome. And I think it's kind of play into kind of what we're trying to do here because it's just waxing nostalgia for Billy and I both, and Billy and I both have a lot in common. So this is going to be a lot of fun. But yeah, Hell Ming's out there. You've got another show called Short Bus Cinema, which is where me and the infamous Johnny Krug, we try to find the worst movie ever made. And we call it the Holy Grail of bad movies. So we're trying to do that, and that's a lot of fun. I've got a horror show as well called House of Wax, which also has Johnny Krug and a new guy on there named Levi Garrett. Yes, folks, that's his real name. That was one of the first questions we had. So, is this like a stage name? Just no, that's what my parents called me. So, that's a lot of fun, and I've done several different little solo shows here and there, and just trying to find new and exciting things to do, and this came about because, well, we're locked up, we can't do anything, and I sent Billy a new idea. So when I sent that idea to you, you were like, hold the presses. Why don't we do something?
Absolutely.
And here we are.
Absolutely. Here we are. And some of you might say, hey, I know Scary Dad, but I have never heard that voice before. And so I've been, excuse me, I was sequestered for a while. And without getting into the nasty details of it all, I had a voice that was kind of going out like a bad motor. And went and saw the doctor, and he fixed it. And so now I have a voice that sounds not a whole like a whole new compared to apparently what it used to sound like. So, but the fun part about that was, as a guy who likes to be on podcasts, who's in sales, I tell jokes, I'm always doing something. I had to be quiet for like 3 straight weeks. Actually, closer to 4.5 straight weeks. I couldn't really talk. And when I say I couldn't really talk, like I shouldn't try to talk, and that's fair enough, except for like I physically couldn't do it, and it was really, really weird. So I'm not 100% back, but I'm a whole lot better than I was before I went under. So we'll talk about more about that, like what not what surgery's like, because surgery, I don't know, they just said, hey, check this out, and then wake up.
Yeah.
But
Count,
what it's like
count from 10 to
be,
1.
yeah, but what it's like to wake up and be completely different than you were when you went to sleep. That's odd. That'll be a different show. That might be a Walking Dead episode or something. Because honestly, I went to sleep and I woke up and then the world was going into panic. Kind of crazy. So instead of talking about that, we were going to talk about something else. So, for the first episode of this show, we've decided we're going to go with the seminal 1984 classic coming-of-age movie, The Karate Kid.
Yes!
Yeah.
Yes!
And I've been wanting to watch this, but it's not actually. I'm sure it is, but let me throw back this little bit of tidbit. Like, we've been under quarantine, or not under quarantine, but under like voluntary lockdown for 7 days. On day 3, my children broke the TV, so I had to buy a new TV, which was not inexpensive, and then. I don't know how it happened. I probably did it, but today I broke my stove. So, like, it's been odd, but I wanted to watch The Karate Kid, and we kept not being able to find it, and I think that might have been the first step of the TV not working. But Rick sent me a copy, and it worked on the new TV, so everything's great. And we got to watch that. I got to watch it with my 9-year-old.
Yeah, I'm anxious to see what she thought, because I knew you were going to do that because they haven't seen it before.
Okay, so let me start by saying that my daughter's favorite person in all universes is Darth Vader.
Wow.
She identifies with the bad guy. She like her favorite character out of all the Star Wars movies is Kylo Ren. She likes the bad guy.
Yeah.
So she got frustrated because at the beginning, Daniel only kind of fakes knows karate. Right. And he gets in a fight with the other guys who do know karate, and they whoop his butt. And then one guy starts calls Daniel, he's like, "Hey, Karate Kid." Juliet was like, they shouldn't be calling him that till he knows karate.
Missing the sarcasm.
No, and so then as Mr. Miyagi's making him do a bunch of chores, she's like, when's he gonna teach her? When's he gonna start teaching karate? This show sucks. It's like just chores. She was mad. And then finally, she got up and left before the tournament. Like she didn't watch the tournament.
Oh.
But she was all pissed off because she was like, dude, if they wanted to call this movie The Karate Kid, it should have been about the blonde guy because he knows karate. And I was just like, okay. Such a different perspective on things because she identified with Johnny. She was like, yeah, he's actually the guy who knows karate, so it should have been about him.
Well, come on, man. I mean, this is a guy that can wear a headband no matter what type of clothing that he's wearing. The headband is pretty much just a given. He's going to wear it just about everywhere. So you got to give him props, man. I mean, the red jacket on the motorbike. I mean, the dude's even wearing a motorcycle helmet, but he's still got the headband on underneath.
Oh, yeah.
Got to give it to him.
Johnny would have been pretty much, I mean, even at the end when Daniel whoops him, like, Johnny's like, "You're okay, man." He, like, high fives him and, like, picks him up and stuff. Johnny's kind of like the reluctant bad guy, except for the beginning where he's just kind of a jerk over the girl. But, he's not a horrible human. And
well, we say that.
The movie makes him out to be like this horrible human, but like Mr. Miyagi says, he's like, there are no bad students, there's just bad teachers.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But you got to remember, in 80s terms, man, a bad guy is somebody that will run over your boom box with a motorcycle.
Oh, yeah.
That's about as evil a thing you can do back then.
He's certainly a bad guy. He's just a little... My wife walks in, she's like, "What are all these guys, 30? Except for Daniel, who is probably the oldest one of them all.
Right. Isn't it funny, too, going back and watching now, because even like his mom, in your mind, she seemed a lot older when you were a kid, but when you watch her now, you're like, man, she wasn't that old at all.
Yeah. No, she's single mom, so like he's in his teens. She's probably in her like mid to late 30s.
Maybe.
Best.
Yeah.
And she's not as bad. Like you remember her being kind of just a little bit more nagging, whereas if you watch it now, she's nagging but hopeful.
Right.
Like, hey, let me see what your eye looks like. What's wrong with you? You're like that's a pretty good mom. Whereas when I was a kid, I remember she's like just like she wasn't bad, but she was just annoying. You're like, come on, mom, get off my back. Like
Well,
in reality, you're like, no, you're not going out like that. Like
right,
somebody beat your ass. I'm calling the principal.
right.
Like, you're staying home.
But yeah, man, what a great perspective from a young kid checking it. Of course, that's funny because you look at where Cobra Kai kind of picks up and where it goes from. That's probably what your daughter needs to watch because she's like, yeah, this makes sense.
Yeah, and I haven't had a chance to watch that yet. I know it's on Netflix.
You got to,
But
you got to, yeah,
well, it's like we were talking about before. Like I completely blanked on part three. I know I've
yeah,
seen part three, but I remember one and two.
yeah.
In my life, like those were a big deal.
Yes, they
And
were.
what again? One of the things that kind of formed the show is when I was a little kid. So when Karate Kid came out, it was '84. So it would have come out in probably summer of '84. That would have made me 8 years old. And the difference between, like, I have a 9-year-old, so the difference between being 8 in the '80s and being 9 in the
Yeah,
early '20s is, man, Karate Kid, my buddy, his dad had a VCR and he had movies. He had like 3 or 4 movies written down on a tape. And we watched Karate Kid and like we'd go spend the night and we'd watch Karate Kid and we'd go outside on the trampoline and just kick each other in the face. Just flying, I mean, assisted trampoline jump kicks, like right in the chest, and like knock each other off that trampoline in the middle of the night.
right.
Like every now and then we'd make too much noise, and somebody would be like, "Hey, y'all,
I'm trying
keep
to
it down.
sleep. I
Go
don't
to
care if you
sleep.
kick
Go to
yourself to
bed."
death. Just
Yeah,
don't keep me awake.
and that was a significant difference between then and now. Is
Yeah.
they'd call the cops on you now, like, "Oh my God, there's these children that are killing each other." You're like,
Well,
they got a baby fight club in the backyard.
my wife and I have been watching a series on Netflix, which I'm not going to mention, but in the captions at the beginning, as far as the warnings of the show, you got things like, nudity, sexual violence, all these things, and then smoking's up there. It's just like
Yeah.
how things have changed when you warn a watcher that, hey, there's going to be smoking in this show.
So,
And you're like, really?
somebody on this show is smoking. Yeah,
Incredible.
It gets crazy.
I mean, if they were shooting up heroin, they wouldn't say anything. But if you're smoking,
Oh yeah. Well, the bizarre thing is, I guess it was 2018, so a year and a half ago. I guess I was in Seattle, and in Washington State, marijuana is legal for recreation. Like you can just walk down the street and buy some and whatever. And there are like the street smells like pot.
yeah,
It smells like a skunk, and there are signs posted talking about how you're not allowed to smoke cigarettes within 25 feet of an entrance of a building, and it's a $500 fine for tossing your butt on the ground. And I'm like, okay, so in this weird world, like where like marijuana, there's entire Miami Vice episodes about how bad that stuff is.
right.
While they're smoking and busting the bad guys, like how are they going to retcon all of this? Because like like it's okay to smoke weed all day long, but don't you smoke a cigarette next to this
Right.
building, or else, it's bizarre. But
Oh,
I don't know. You grow into strange worlds.
right. But yeah, man, this movie, I got to watch it again earlier today. Haven't seen it in a while, and again, you do forget how big this was. I mean, not only the first movie, but you've got 4 in the series, right? You got 3 that has Daniel in it, and then the 4th is like a reboot with where he's teaching a girl, right? So, and then you get the total reboot, which happened just a few years back with Jackie Chan in there. But what a legacy from a movie that's basically a teen version of Rocky is kind of the best way to describe it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it was for us. It was our being the underdog teenager who finds Elizabeth Shue. Oh, Elizabeth Shue. I mean, the perfect girl next door, right? I mean,
Of course.
and the story of fighting back, beating the bullies, being taken in, being trained, and in 2 months' time being able to whip everybody that's been doing karate for 15 years.
Yeah, exactly. There was definitely a whole lot of stretches of the imagination. Mr. Miyagi was just that cool. I also remember being a kid and just thinking that Mr. Miyagi's backyard
Yes.
was that was the epitome. Like,
Yeah.
I think even now, like watching this movie, because I haven't watched it in a really long time, and we have a new puppy, and a couple of days ago, my wife was like, "Hey, go buy some sod for the backyard." I was like, "We're not buying sod for the backyard. That's just the dog's just gonna eat it. Like, there's no sod. It's just like you chose mud. You chose mud by having a dog. That's what you get." But man, with the ponds and the raised platforms and little decking and all the flowers and everything, I think that's my ultimate retirement goal. Is to just like. And kind of like Miyagi, like have a junkyard full of classic cars that run, that you're not selling for any specific reason, but they're just there and awesome. I think that would be another really good retirement goal.
Yeah.
It always bugged me that Daniel chose that weird looking. I mean, the car that he has when it's separated from the pack is badass.
Right.
But when it's sitting with all the others, there are so many other cool cars to choose from.
Yeah, this one had the more rounded body style of an older car versus the other ones had the 60s cuts in the hoods and all that stuff, So it was kind of an odd choice, but hey, that's the car you notice first when he first walks on the lot. So I think it just kind of sticks with you that way. So, and just that whole scene where he's giving him the car for his birthday after he makes him, do all the work on everything. But there's a level of depth into this movie that I've totally forgot about, and it's weird because I've raised my daughter all of her life, and I want to go back and show her this part because my whole speech to her whole life has been about balance in your life. Everything is about balance, the good and the bad, and it's all got to, as long as the good is outweighing the bad, that's your balance in life, and you have to have that balance, and it's also about being consistent in who you are, And these are the things that I preached to her whole life. And I go back and watch this movie, and dang if I didn't really subconsciously take it from Miyagi telling Daniel, hey, life is about balance. And it just floored me when I saw it. I was like, I can't believe I've been teaching a piece of Mr. Miyagi my whole life to my daughter, because that's what I believe. I believe, life is totally about balance. That's the way you make it through this crazy thing. And it's right there in this movie. And the level of depth of Miyagi's character losing his wife when he's in the army and the death. And then Daniel, I never even really picked up on that either. He's basically, Daniel's the son that he didn't have.
Mm-hmm.
I never caught that as a teen. But now I look at him like, man, this is totally what's going on right here.
Well, I think what you're talking about is, I was blessed. I had both my parents, they were there and they were present, and but man, most of my friends growing up didn't have one or the other. Right. And, that was one of those things where it was poignant for it didn't occur to me whenever I was a kid, kicking my friends in the face because the Karate Kid was awesome. But, it's like, yeah, Daniel's the son he never had, but also, Miyagi's the father.
Right.
You always, that was one of those things about this movie that I think there's a couple of others, maybe like American Ninja or something, where it's like, you're just some kid that lives on a street and you stumble into this mysterious place where they're like, okay, well, you shouldn't have come here, but now we're going to make you something better than human.
Yeah.
Obviously, Mr. Miyagi is a whole lot softer. Like he's not teaching you how to stab people with a sword. But which, you might need that when the ninjas just do jump out, because they did a lot in the 80s. You never knew whenever like 18 ninjas would just drop and start wrecking shop on you. So that's a good thing to know. But yeah, man, everybody wanted the guy down the street to be a secret Mr. Miyagi who's just
Right.
gonna tell you that everything's gonna be okay. Here's some karate. Here's not much karate, but enough to kick everybody's ass.
Right. Right.
Because that was amazing. Like I never realized. Well, we will talk about this one in a different episode, but like the Lost Boys.
Yeah. Yep.
It never occurred to me that the Lost Boys, like we did a show on it on Scary Dad. I always thought the Lost Boys took place over the course of a summer. I didn't realize it was over the course of a weekend.
Of a weekend, yeah.
Because the evolution of the characters is such that you just don't really realize that it's happening that fast. You think like, oh, you know, he's starting to wear sunglasses. He's starting to be a little bit weird. And it's going to take 3 or 4 days and 5 or 6 days and 8 or 10. No, it's just like, boom.
Yeah.
And so like with Karate Kid, it's like,
month and a half?
That's a month and a half.
From
It's
Halloween
like
till...
karate tournaments on the wall. And
December
he's like,
9th.
We'll kick your ass on that day. Like, let me train this one kid who's kind of skinny and kind of a jerk to beat everybody's ass in a row all day long.
And I love the techniques too, because you gotta love, well, Mr. Miyagi, Pat Morita's character in this, because not only do you have, when he gets serious, you see the wisdom, but half the time the wisecracking stuff too. It's like, okay, so what do I do now? Oh, just go out there and try to kick some waves coming at you. I mean, it's like just making stuff up, you know. Stand on the front of the boat there and just try to keep your balance. Don't disturb the fish, you know. You gotta love that stuff. And then when you finally see what it's all for, you know, it's giving him the reps, right? The repetitions of wax on, wax off, all these things. So you're training without training. It's almost a Bruce Lee mentality of the art of fighting without fighting, you know. And you gotta love that. I mean,
that's why my daughter was like, "This movie's about chores." I'm like, dude.
Welcome to real life. Guess what happens when you turn 15? That's right, chores.
Yep. It's time for chores. All right, so we got to move on to the next segment, which is everything else. we don't have a whole lot of time, so we gotta cover everything else. So, what are your final thoughts on Karate Kid? Does it deserve the sequels that it got? Does it deserve all of the accolades? Does it deserve to have wax on, wax off be a people who never saw that movie, quote that movie?
That or sweep the leg, or I mean, it's got its catchphrases. I think it's a huge slice of '80s Americana, man. It's the thing that every young boy wishes to happen. It's not only being able to defend yourself and gain the father you didn't have, but finding the girl of your dreams, and it all being rolled up into one package with Bananarama singing in the background. I mean, you know, there's some solid songs on this soundtrack as well. It's a home run, and I think it's a real good representation. I think people's minds are kind of jaded when they have like 80s parties and the way they dress and stuff. Watch this movie, man, because it is dead up what people dressed like back in that time. And I don't know, man. I think it's still solid. I think anybody can enjoy it. I don't think you have to have a new version of it. It still speaks to the heart of what the whole story is about. So I think it's a modern classic of sorts. I don't know anybody that doesn't like it.
I was going to say I totally agree. There's a lot of movies that have filler parts.
Right.
It's like, and we're not talking about the montage, but we're just having that like kind of weird, pensive look into the water where a character's trying to figure out themselves. There seems to be a lot of those kind of movies these days where it's like they ordered a hour and a half and they only had like an hour and 20 minutes worth of story to tell, so then they had to extend it. Karate Kid was 2 hours long, and it was weird because whenever I pressed play, which you didn't used to see whenever it was VHS, you press play and it started at 1 and just went until it ended. It was 2 hours long.
Wow.
It
Doesn't
played.
seem like it.
It doesn't. It plays. It like everything in it is high and tight. Every scene is needed. All of the little details that I'm thinking as an editor or producer you might cut that matters. Like whenever Daniel's mom gets up and walks away, she asks him about the girl, and Daniel doesn't want to reply because it's his mom, and he's just kind of like, well, I'm not going to really tell you. And then she's like, oh, well, I got to go. And she hops up and bounces.
Right.
And then he just starts talking about the girl.
Right.
Like, I think in a lot of modern movies, that wouldn't be there. They'd
Right.
cut probably that whole restaurant scene out. Even though you notice the karate guys in the background noticing the bike, and they're like, okay, we're going to jump him around the back corner whenever he leaves. But he just has this moment of being like, she's awesome, she's pretty, like I like her. Those little details, that kind of stuff that just humanizes the whole movie and makes it all. It's not about karate, even though according to Juliet it should have been more about karate. But
and how about the abrupt ending too? Because it's like he holds the trophy, goes woohoo, and it shows Pat Morita, and it just cuts off. Becky was like, my wife was like, is that the way it ends? I'm like, yep.
Yeah. Of course, Pat Morita was just on Happy Days before that, so it wasn't like he was well known as the guy.
Well, the ton of crap that he made a lot of bad B movie appearances and stuff, and then this one is like his home run. And he's perfect.
Mm-hmm. Was it Pat Morita that was in the Wonder Woman episode about the Japanese?
It's very possible.
I don't know. It wasn't him, and there was the main guy, but I think he was one of them.
Yeah, I think it's very possible.
So let's move to everything else. So we don't have to talk about the entire year. But I made some notes of some things to chat about.
Yeah.
1983. Yeah! And the fun part about this show is we might not even talk about a movie. We might talk about a show. Yeah! We might talk about a toy. We might talk about a guitar. Yeah! A guitar player. Yeah! A guitar player who was in a band. Yeah! So I don't know. We're just going to talk about whatever.
80s porn stars. Who knows?
Dude. Have you noticed the mustache growth? I'm working on it.
you getting that Harry Reams going, ain't you?
Yeah, right. But just to talk about 1984. So you had Karate Kid. Then when you move over to records.
Oh, gosh.
Like, there's a big old list of them.
Insane.
So one thing of note I didn't realize, I would have assumed that this one, I thought this was later, but Iron Maiden Powerslave.
Yes.
In 84. I would have thought that might have been further up, but.
Oh, yeah? No, man, I remember that.
Not further, further back, further up.
Further up, like 82, something like that.
Like maybe 86, something like that. Because
that way, okay.
Yeah, because it was so. There's just so much Maiden on that record.
Yes, it is. My favorite, by the way. That's my favorite Maiden.
Powerslave's amazing.
Yeah. Tell me why I have to be a Powerslave.
So, my 6-year-old's favorite band is still Iron Maiden.
Yes.
It's because of Run to the Hills.
Yeah.
That's her favorite. So she's like, Dad. I'm like, well, let me play it. Okay, so also 1984, I wasn't old enough to really know them. I didn't know Metallica until Injustice for All.
Yeah.
Which was in 89. But Ride the Lightning.
Yeah. Real Metallica, yeah.
The old Metallica, the good Metallica.
All right.
Before they started talking about their feelings. You built a certain wall around yourself, and people are like, the way I feel is kind of sad. You're like, well, you don't deserve to say it. You need to scream it on stage with the guitar. You're not allowed to just say it. Get back in the
yeah at the end of it.
Exactly. Bon Jovi's first record came out in 84. I would have thought that came out sooner, considering their big success
Right.
in late, but
Good,
hey,
solid first album too, man. I mean, it didn't do as well as it should, but I remember seeing the video for "She Don't Know Me" was the first thing I saw, and I thought, okay, this guy's a superstar. I didn't know who he
mhm.
was, but I could just tell from immediate. It was that hairdo, man.
Bon
and
Jovi's a good-looking guy.
and
It kind
and the songs are very well made songs.
it kind of creeps me out that Bon Jovi's had a bass player that was never seen because he was just like this dude. He's just a studio musician that was not interested in touring, and he
Right.
wouldn't have anyway because he didn't have the hair. He's just kind of
Yep.
a heavy set guy. But
If that could
he's
have
like
only if that could have only been the keyboard player.
right. But this dude's just like holding down the and the bass player for Bon Jovi got kicked out for being wasted. And it's like, how wasted do you have to be to not have to play the instrument? Like, you just show up and lean yourself against a wall and get kicked out. Like,
That's like Guns N' Roses kicking Steven Adler out because he's got a drug problem.
right.
Thought it was a requirement, dude.
Yeah. I wasn't doing drugs before I auditioned for the band. I did them to make sure I got in. So on the flip side, while we got Powerslave coming out, we've also got Careless Whisper by George Michael being the number one song in America. That's one of those. It's like, now to be fair, also "Wake Me Up" by Wham, which is another
Sure.
George Michael song.
Yeah.
That was number 2 or 3. "Girls Just Want to Have Fun" by Cyndi Lauper,
Sure.
and then "Relax" by Frankie Goes to Hollywood.
Oh yeah.
So the 80s were a strange time.
Yeah. Without a
It's
doubt. I mean, and the beauty of it though, why it was a strange time is because MTV was only 2 or 3 years old at this point. So everybody had the mad dash of making videos and getting them on MTV. Possibly the greatest time ever. If you were, I
mhm.
mean, just to experience the early years of MTV and how it was changing so rapidly, and you went from Whitney Houston and Kenny Loggins owning radio airwaves, and it turned into Quiet Riot and Def Leppard and Scorpions. It's like, how did this change even happen? And we're sitting right here. It's like you just woke up one day and changed channel. Okay, all that music is gone. Now it's this. It's like, wow.
Eh, well, the thing is, and it's weird because me talking to my child and her vision of what Karate Kid should be, I remember having a conversation with my dad. My dad played, or he was a radio DJ. He played records. He
Mm,
was not a DJ. He was a disc jockey
right.
on a radio station in the late 70s. And he would talk about how, you used to have top 40, and that would have Motown, it would have Led Zeppelin, and it would have like John Denver, like
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
everything, like anything that was charting was all kind of lumped together on the same station. And they did have, like, okay, if it was rock and roll and R&B, it was on a station. Maybe you'd have country, was a different one.
Right.
But pretty much anything that was defined as rock and roll was,
Yeah.
here you go. And you had several stations, but they were all playing the same thing. And then things started getting broken up and segmented out, and this is pop and rock and heavy metal and
Yeah.
whatever. MTV, that was exactly the same thing. It's like,
Yes.
we don't care what it is,
Yep.
make it interesting and we'll put it on. That was in the early 80s. Early 90s, same thing. Nirvana broke through, grunge
Sure.
broke through. Record companies were like, I don't care what you do, just be cool.
Right.
Like, and there was a lot of strange bands that didn't push further out than their one song, but you saw that. And then MTV went away. They started just playing
Yeah.
reality shows and pregnant teen shows and stuff. Like, I don't think MTV. Well, maybe they do realize now. Maybe it just wasn't worth the money. But how much life like identify how many people just identified with who they were and what they were.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was what you modeled your life after as a teen in the 80s, because you were getting to see how people in other parts of the United States or whatever lived. I mean, you had American Bandstand and things like that before, but this was like you were getting a bigger picture of what's actually going on, and you're getting to see these bands that you wouldn't see on American Bandstand. I mean, you're not going to see Judas Priest, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that video of You Got Another Thing Coming with the laser light behind them and all that kind of stuff. I mean, these are those images that are forever ingrained in your head. I mean, how can you not hear Danger Zone by Kenny Loggins and not see the montage of the jets flying in the video? It just made... Cyndi Lauper, when you said Girls Just Want to Have Fun, the video pops in your head.
Mm-hmm.
You can't think of Thriller without the video popping in your head. So, I mean, it made such a difference in the way you perceive music, or receive music, I guess. The visual is such a part. And now it's like we've kind of gone opposite of that, because now there really is no visual. Maybe Lady Gaga is something you can think of that has tried to do something visual. Everything else now, there's no push video-wise to promote anything.
Yeah, videos are only on YouTube, and
yeah,
that's usually, YouTube has there's a renaissance though. Excuse me, the band Gunship.
Yeah.
They create and craft video lovers videos for their songs.
Right.
The Midnight, they cobble a bunch of old 80s movies together and make a really cool video. So, I mean, there are those that love it. There's guys like us that sit around and talk about, like, oh, man.
The good old days.
The good old days. Like, yeah! All right, so we're not exactly sure what we're going to call this thing yet. We're going to call it something tomorrow. We're going to continue to talk about the name. If you're listening to this, actually, you can look at what the title is and find out what we decided. I might come in and cut it in later. It'll depend on what I can do. But
I'm really pushing for the Rick Morgan show. That's just me, though.
That sounds good to me. Just put a big old capital R on there.
Yeah, the Rick Morgan show featuring Rick Morgan. I mean, it's got a ring to it.
They should have called the apocalypse the bunghole. Like, it's not the coronavirus, it's the bunghole.
My corona.
Right? It's everybody's like, here we get TB. Run away.
Yeah, it's a respiratory problem, but hey, at least I've got enough Charmin to last, I've seen a cool meme, which is Doc coming back in the card to Michael J. Fox and saying, hey, I've been to the year 2045 and they still got toilet paper left over from 2020.
I imagine, man, it's this is the weirdest apocalypse ever. We've talked about, like, dude, we've watched every scary movie that's ever been put out, every apocalyptic, we've watched it. We know how these things play out. I saw this thing coming a mile away. I was like, oh my God, even if the virus isn't that bad, people are going to freak out and start buying crap. If you would have bet me, like, what are they going to freak out and buy? I would have been like, dry beans.
Right.
Rice.
Yeah.
Potato chips.
Yeah.
Toilet paper? Nah. Like, scoot back, reshuffle. Let's figure this out. So it's been a weird apocalypse, man.
Toilet paper is a luxury. I hate to disappoint some listeners out there if you're a stockpiler of toilet paper. It's a luxury, folks. I mean, you got to remember, till about, I don't know, less than 100 years ago, there was no such thing as toilet paper.
Mm-hmm.
Probably not even that long ago. So people survived, a few thousand years without it. So, it just boggles the mind of why that's the thing to go,
It's interesting. Well, I'm almost out, so let's go ahead. let's tell everybody we'll see you next time, and we'll see you next week, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. See you, folks.
Later.